It's Great Day Houston.
Yeah, oh yeah! You weren't watching just any show.
That's right.
Just right, al dente.
From celebrities, food, fashion, health, and more.
You've got to change your lifestyle.
Exactly.
Wake up with your morning cup of fun with your host, Deborah Duncan. Great Day starts now.
Our next guest say a little prep work up front can keep you from turning into a Scrooge later. Please welcome psychotherapist Emily Diala and author of Unbreak Your Heart, Marilyn Fountain. Hi there, ladies. Marilyn, we're going to talk about your book in a minute, but in your other life, you work at the Star of Hope. Yes. And so all these things we talk about right here, you see every day with people who may have felt this way at one time, but now all they want is a home, a safe place to stay, and food.
Oh, absolutely. You know, when you have lost everything and all you have are your feeling of trial and pressure and worries and what's tomorrow going to bring and how am I going to feed my children, myself, you know, who's going to provide the roof over my head. When you have issues like that, everything else just goes away.
Yeah.
Because that is your single focus. One of the great things about Star of Hope is that we've always been able to answer all those questions, you know, be able to put people, you know, into a place of security and provide the food and the wherewithal for them to get back on their feet.
Yeah, and that's the key point with the Star of Hope, is that you don't just, you know, we say give a person a fish they eat for a day and teach them how to fish and they can fish for life. You teach people how to get back on their feet. And I love the stories that you all have of people who went in there needing help, who today are volunteers. And they say the most valuable lesson they learned, of course, is that the most priceless thing you have is, you know, your sense of self and your family. And speaking of family, there are a lot of people who will have a missing place at the dinner table. You know, this time of year. My family's one of them. My brother was killed by a drunk driver. And that's very hard to deal with. In your book, Unbreak Your Heart, you deal with grief.
Yes. Holiday times are very hard times because when Emily was speaking about some of the things people need to keep in mind, a lot has to do with tradition, and it has to do with what you've been accustomed to with all the different members of your family.
Yeah, because it doesn't necessarily mean it was like, you know, tradition, like, oh, we have turkey or we have this. It's like traditionally what happens when family gets together.
Right.
You know?
And you have to be able to put something valuable back in that missing place. You know, if someone is missing, you can't put that person back, but you can put value back in that environment and in that space. And it depends upon what you believe. You know, I lean on my faith. You know, as you know, my son died, and that was a big hole, you know, and still is, you know, at our dinner table. But the family in its totality is very valuable. And so you change things up, you do things a little differently. You have to remember that there are other people. You can't get so focused on what you don't have that you don't realize what you do have.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I had to keep in mind that I had other children, and I couldn't lose my other children to my grief over having lost one child. So and not to mention my husband's feelings.
Yeah.
So you have to keep things into perspective, and you have to look at that place where you find your strength.
Yeah.
I found my strength in Christ, and so that's where I put all of my troubles. I took them to the cross. And I'll tell you something else, Deborah. I think we sometimes need to reevaluate how we look at our lives. I think of it sort of like a quilt, and every piece represents a relationship. And so you have all of these different patches, and some of them are very colorful, some of them are very bright, bold, some of them are dull, some of them are rough. You know, there are all kinds of colors and textures that are there. If one of them gets torn away or is frayed or is soiled, you know, or anything of that sort, it doesn't mean the whole quilt is gone.
Yeah,
you know. And so you have to remember that, and you have to put your focus in a place that gives you strength, that restores your faith and your purpose.
All right. Everyone in our audience, by the way, is going home with a copy of Marilyn's book, Unbreak Your Heart. So Marilyn, thank you very much. And it just kind of helps you work through those demons that we have, you know. If you'd like more information on Emily and Marilyn's relationship advice, just log on to our site at greatdayhouston.com.